Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Now in this video, I am going to be going over, in my opinion, sort of a framework that I've been using over the past couple of years to generate money in crypto, in DeFi, and essentially think of it like a business, like you're going into this with a business mindset, thinking this is a long-term position to make cash flow on a long-term basis and how to sustain that. But before we get into it, if you could please hit the like button, subscribe down below if you want to, and turn the notifications on so you don't miss a future video. Make sure to go check out the links in the description to my Twitter and my Discord servers. Links are down there. Also, there's going to be two other links. One of them is going to be for Aperture. Now, we use this field farming. It's going to be pretty important in this video, but they are currently doing an airdrop. You can currently generate points just by doing these tasks here, and you can generate points which will turn into Aperture tokens when they do launch their tokens. It's essentially a free airdrop just by using the app, right? And we use it in yield farming anyway. You've got just over a day to farm this, so worth jumping on. And then also Crystal, same thing. You can get crystals and they will turn into crystal tokens when they do launch. And again, to get them, you just come down here and complete these tasks every day or however often you like, and you'll get crystals. And just for swapping $1 worth of a token, you get 10 crystals. So $100 equals 1,000 crystals, etc. This stacks up. So even if you want to use this as your DEX to swap between tokens, that could be something worth doing. But I'll leave a link for this down there as well. But with that said, let's jump into it. So the crypto market at the moment has been doing pretty well. Ethereum almost at $4,000, up 30% this week. And the reason for that is because obviously the ETF, I think it went from 25% chance of getting approved up to 75%. I know the deadline is today. Whether or not they accept it or not, who knows? But this was based off the fact that the majority of people do think it will be approved. And also, by the way, I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. Always do your own research and be very careful about what you're investing in crypto and DeFi, because it is very risky. So let's go ahead and see what I am talking about. Okay, now of course we're talking about yield farming, but so crypto has been doing pretty well. If we take a look at DeFi Llama, which shows us the volume of chains, right? We can see the volume and see how things are going. If we take a look over the past sort of couple of weeks, zoom in to this month, which is right about here, you can see volume has been up the past 3 days. So if you're already yield farming, fees have been pretty nice over the past few days, just because the volume's up across the board in crypto, which is great. So how does this work? Well, I've created this little mind map here, and this is how I think about this business model, if you like. So the top here, we have yield farming, which is the main sort of cash flowing business that we have in DeFi. Of course, we have sort of ROI dApps and passive income dApps, which again, I do still believe there is a place in a portfolio for them. For me anyway, and for a lot of people I know are still interested in them. And it's because, yes, they are super risky and they could disappear whenever. That's why we use a small portion of our portfolio to allocate towards these things. Like, passive income dApps, they get 1, 2, 3, 4% per day, are very risky and are not going to last forever. But they can be great short term to generate cash flow and to make a quick return. And then you can diversify that and invest it into something else and keep flipping it that way. So yes, passive income dApps do have a place in a portfolio, but the main thing we're going to be talking about here is going to be yield farming, which is where the majority of the portfolio goes, right? So when you yield farm, of course, you create LP positions. If we go on Aperture here, I'll just show you some of my positions that I have over on, we'll see base, just because I'm on the base chain anyway. You can see that we've got these fees here. We've got $15 here, $15 here, $5 here, etc. $23 here. We've got fees to claim, right? This is just one place that I yield farm. I also yield farm on Aerodrome, Extra Finance, Turbos, and a few other dApps as well, Blade Swap, etc. So then what happens is we generate fees. So when someone swaps something on Uniswap, right? When someone swaps something on Uniswap, let's say I swap I've just got 1.3 Ethereum here. Let's say I swap that for USDT, right? There's 5K here. I will pay a fee. Okay, you can see this fee here, this $12 fee that I'll pay, right? Now, when I pay this $12 fee, that goes to people that have positions and are supplying liquidity for ETH and USDC. So when someone makes a swap for any token on any chain, whoever's providing liquidity for that position, because there needs to be liquidity in the system for that swap to happen, Then there's a fee that you pay, tiny fee. This is a 0.25%, right? 0.25% fee, which is $12. That will then go to people that are providing liquidity. So when that happens, we then collect these fees. That's what you could see over on Aperture, right? These are the fees because when people swap, I get paid a fee of that because I'm supplying liquidity. So then you can then claim fees, and there's a bunch of other things you can do, right? The first thing is to reinvest those fees back into other positions to increase your cash flow. And then of course that goes back up to reclaiming fees, and then you kind of start this sort of second section of this mind map again. Okay, so reinvesting income, again, this is the good thing about DeFi is that you don't need to start with a huge portion. This is why I always say only risk what you can afford to lose, because it's pretty risky. You've got impermanent loss, you've got DApp exposure potentially. It could get exploited, etc. So there are risks involved still in yield farming. Yes, it is as safe as you can get when it comes to sort of passive income within DeFi, but there are still risks, and permanent loss being the main one. And you know, I'm not going to go too deep into that in this video because it will get extremely long. But there are still some risks. So you could reinvest your income. That's why I only say invest what you can afford to lose, right? But when you reinvest income, when you're reinvesting these fees, let's say I make, I don't know, $1,000 a week. Well, let's say there's a position that makes 365%, right? That $1,000 extra that I made in that week will then start to generate an extra 1% per day. So I'll then start making an additional $70 a week, right, on that. So now I'm at $1,070, and then I can reinvest that, etc. And you could snowball this and compound this up. Okay, so let's say you're making a couple $100 a week, for $1,000 a week, whatever it is in DeFi. If you then reinvest that, you're then increasing how many fees you're getting each week. So you're increasing your income, etc. That's the good thing about DeFi, is that reinvesting, especially in the early days, is pretty cool until you get to a point of your portfolio where, you know, you're at the mid 5 figures, 6-figure range, and you're making very good sort of yield. You're making very good weekly income. Then you don't need to necessarily reinvest. But I always do recommend having some sort of coins on the side ready to jump into any position when one comes up, especially like short-term positions, so you can catch yield. Okay, and what else can you do with this? Well, buying blue chips, and then this can go into a cold storage like a Ledger or a Trezor or something, which is a long-term investment bag. So let's say you have your favorite crypto coins. You've got Bitcoin here, Ethereum, BNB, Solana, Toncoin. I actually bought a bunch of Ton at 170, which was a pretty decent bet. AVAX, you know, Polygon. Like, if you think there's an altcoin run coming, well, the good thing is you now have weekly cash flow that you can go ahead and deploy into these tokens at your disposal, right? You now have disposable weekly income from a new sort of investment that you have. Now you can go ahead and invest that into blue chips. Or let's say you do this full time, you need to cash out, right, to pay your bills, or you want to diversify your investments, because it's kind of like anything, right? You don't just want to have yield farming as your only investment in life. Maybe you want to have some stocks for the long term. Maybe you want to have other cash flow investments. You want to get into real estate or other cash flowing assets. Then again, that's something you can do. And the final thing that I've got here, and by the way, this is just what I do, right? This is a mind map for what I do. And in my opinion, one of the best sort of ways to structure this. So you have yield farming, you claim your fees, you reinvest, which then goes back into claiming more fees, buying blue chips to hold long term, cashing out to pay bills and diversify investments. I do have also investments outside of crypto. And then you can lend your assets as well. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you come over to something like Extra Finance, which is one of the sort of dApps that we have here that we can actually go ahead and use to generate yield. You can use leverage on here. You don't have to use leverage, but you can. Be very careful when taking out leverage, because if you aren't staying in sort of a healthy range, you can get liquidated. So just be careful here when you're taking leverage. But when you're taking leverage, where does this money come from? Like, there's 478 Ethereum here available to go ahead and borrow. So where does that come from? Well, you come over to the lend tab, and then you can go ahead and lend out your tokens here. So you can lend out USDC for 30% a year, right? So let's say you're in like the crazy high ranges by now. Okay, let's say you're in crazy high ranges and in terms of your portfolio, like mid five, six figures, and you're generating a nice, healthy few $1,000s a week. Well, then going ahead and putting some of this in here to get 30% APY and keep stacking this up, on USDC, safe, stable, well, other than when it depegged, right? But that's a very rare situation. A very stable asset getting 30% a year is pretty good. You can get 42% on Aero. So if you're farming on Aerodrome, which I know quite a few of us are, OVN 256%. So you can come ahead and lend your assets for even a more additional yield. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's exactly the same as just reinvesting. Yes, but you're doing it in a different way. What I mean by here is just reinvesting and putting it into new positions, or putting it and increasing the dollar amount of your positions. But in the lending, we're doing something different where we're lending our funds so that other people can borrow it and then go ahead and use that to generate for their positions, right? But if you don't want to take the risk on of going into a riskier position, then you can just go ahead and stake your USDC or whatever the token is and go ahead and generate a yield on that. Because when the farmers, they pay off their loan, or they pay, basically when you're taking leverage, you're also paying back every day what you've borrowed. But that's sort of included in the APR, etc. So yeah, that's how the fees are paid. So then you can go ahead and lend your tokens, right? So this, in my opinion, is one of the frameworks that I use with yield farming. And I think it's a pretty decent framework. Now, if you're just getting started with a smaller amount, then I would really just focus on this. If I were you, is yield farming, claiming fees, reinvesting income, and buying blue chips. If I were you, these are sort of the two that I would focus on. It's always good to have a bag of blue chips on the side, just so that you're not missing out on a crazy bull market. Try and avoid cashing out unless you really have to pay your bill. Pay bills with this income that you've got. Of course, eventually you will be cashing out, but to build this to be sustainable long term, you need to be reinvesting pretty heavily in the early stages, depending, of course, how much you come in with. If you're coming in with like 50 to 100 grand, then of course, it's not necessary to reinvest, because again, you already have a decent sort of foundation. But if you're still building your foundation, let's say you're getting 10% a month on average, or let's say you're getting 10% a month, or 20% a month, whatever it is, then you can kind of work backwards from there, right? Depending on how much you're going to be making. So I hope this helps. Let me know what you think. Is this something similar that you follow? This is sort of a framework that I would, again, apologies, this is my first time making a mind map. Apologies if it's a bit messy or whatever, but this kind of makes sense to me. Yield farming, claiming fees, reinvest income, which then gets you to claim more fees, and you can start this again. Buying blue chips, which is a long-term investment, cashing out to pay bills and diversify investments, and then lending your assets, which again goes back into claiming more fees. Then another thing here is when you cash out, when you claim, maybe you want to allocate 5%, 10% of this to risky investments like passive income dApps, etc. potentially. So there's a bunch of things you can do with this, but this is sort of the framework I use. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.